Richard Dawkins is well known as a formidable opponent to all religion and constructs challenges to many of the traditional arguments for the existence of God. He is equally well known for his plain speaking regarding his feelings about religion and is happy to challenge religion on every level. In his work The God Delusion, he not only claims that the argument is childish, but says it is simply trickery. This kind of challenge we've seen eloquently explained in the work of others. He also points out the lack of empirical evidence. We can meet this challenge by agreeing, of course, it is an a priori argument, so therefore it does indeed lack empirical evidence. If empirical evidence is what is needed to prove something has a reality, then yes, the argument fails. Dawkins has a legitimate point. However, we must acknowledge the need for the argument to take place regarding this point. Our rationalist philosophers would point out that the whole purpose of this argument is not to rely on empirical evidence, that such evidence is open to flaws, and that reason can lead us to truth. We need to be able to demonstrate that rational argument is insufficient. Dawkins goes on to use the work of Douglas Gasking, who provided us with a parody of the ontological argument which may demonstrate a weakness. He begins, "The creation of the world is the most marvellous achievement imaginable. The merit of an achievement is due to A, its intrinsic quality, and B, the ability of its creator." Gasking continues. The greater the disability or handicap of the creator, the more impressive the achievement. The most formidable handicap for the creator would be non-existence. If the universe exists as a product of an existent creator, we can conceive of a being greater who created whilst not existing. The existent creator would then not be that than which nothing greater could be conceived, since we can conceive of a greater non-existent being. Here we can see that using a similar process of logic, Gasking points out that than which nothing greater can be conceived is not such an obvious concept to grasp. It would indeed be far more impressive to create a universe from a state of non-existence than to do so from a state of existence. So I can conceive of something greater than the existent God, in which case an existent God cannot be that than which nothing greater can be conceived. In fact, the non-existent God must be defined in that. This argument is clearly produced for comic effect, to ridicule the original versions of the ontological argument. But we must consider whether or not the underlying point has any validity. Scholars like William Lane Craig and Alvin Plantinga, to name but two, have gone on the record challenging Dawkins and his use of Gaskin against the ontological argument. However, what they do demonstrate is the wordplay and the games that they claim are being played with the language when presenting this argument. Gaskin plays with the idea of greatness here and shows us how subjective such an idea is. This may not be the most sophisticated argument, but it is worth referencing in an essay. Of course, Lane Craig and Plantinga point out that this idea is logically incoherent, and there is no possible world where a non-existent being could create all things. In addition, Paul Oppenheimer points out that whilst it might be a greater achievement, there is nothing to make us think that non-existence would make something a greater being.